What's going on, guys? Jason here,
Coach RJ.
Coach Big Bad Bob.
and this is the Mach 1 method. Today, we're going to be talking about youth development programs and the importance of, training the right way. Bobby is our in-house youth performance specialist. So, you want to kick things off?
Yo, I'll kick things off. If you're trying to get big, get here, bro.
Podcast over.
Done. That's it. That's all we got. Oh yeah. So I guess I can start off maybe some first of all misconceptions about youth performance and training, and I think a lot of the times you hear, parents kind of. I've heard multiple things. Parents saying they don't want to stunt their child's growth in the gym, and honestly, that could not be more far from the truth if it's done correctly. A lot of the kids we see, especially in youth performance, it's not necessarily how much size and muscle we're aiming to put on, but more teaching them skills they'll never forget. And I think especially kids going from middle school to high school is a really huge transition period. And from what I've seen in my experience as an athlete and what I've seen, working with youth athletes is generally the time you see them get injured in the gym is when they're training with their friends, and that's in high school.
Right.
And they're kind of just throwing around weight, just trying to look big, feel big, and they're just throwing around, weight uncontrollably, right? But, with kind of doing youth performance when they're middle school and that transition is a huge, kind of teaching point because it never leaves them.
Right.
They might take a year off from training, but they don't leave that nothing that they've learned here will leave their mind.
I think that's a huge thing that, we obviously, you do a great job with the classes, but we've always promoted is, getting especially with young gentlemen, getting the ego lifting,
Oh yeah.
out of their minds, so to speak, but in introducing them to fundamental movement patterns, making sure they're having good form. Training under supervision is the biggest way to bust that myth of talking about stunting your growth. So making sure they're on a solid program. I think we do a really good job of keeping kids accountable to that stuff.
And especially as they're you see I think social media does a great job at giving exposure to the gym to the kids, but in sort of that same context they see maybe kids their age or older hitting PRs every week, and they kind of get sort of oh, I want to do that, I want to hit PRs every single week, I want to move as much weight as possible. And I think what we do here that's really good is teaching them that PRs are earned and they're not given, and the importance of a PR is an accumulation of all the work you put in through the season and not the first day. And I think that's especially we try to, for the program we run, I try to give them a little bit of wiggle room at the end of the program once we're done to maybe have a little fun week where we hit a 3-rep max or maybe a 2-rep max. Occasionally one if they're really begging for it, but nothing with the youth middle. I don't do middle school 1-rep maxes. Maybe later high school, we could do that, but overall, I just want them, what we want them to do is, first of all, just understand the gym, understand the rules of it, what is acceptable for them, what's not, what's proper stretching, what's not, and sort of keeping that standard high, especially doing everything 100%. If you're going to stretch, don't BS it. Your stretching is what, allows you to move freely and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, I think the big thing to rewind is that stunting the growth. We get that all the time. All of us are NSCA certified, so we can attach it in the link maybe, but they have a positional statement that kind of shows how safe lifting is for the kids. Anecdotally, you'll know the kids that have been training, end on end compared to the kids that are not. You see it time and time again. The kids that have been training for 3-4 years through high school, out perform and outlast the kids that are just getting started in high school. So our big thing is we call it our youth development and our youth strength and performance. We're trying to get these kids that foundation that one of us spoke about, so that they're set up for success when we do start to implement some load and do get to the point where we can test them, that they're ready for it. So that was a nice piece you added in there with that. I think that's the first stepping stone with youth training is that it is safe, it is effective, and you should be doing it. I guess a question kind of based off of that would be when to get started. Maybe kids are do I start in high school? Or the parents are do I start my kid in high school? Do I start them in 8th grade, 6th grade? So I'll open it up to the floor there.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And, you know, when I'm trying really hard not to say it depends. You know, I think in my experience, personally speaking, I've worked with kids as young as like 7 and 8 years old. And I've worked with kids, you know, up to 18, 19 years old, right? And each of those demographics obviously train in a much different way. And I've seen 14-year-olds show really low readiness for the gym, and I've seen 7-year-olds show really high readiness for the gym. And part of it is the mental maturity side of it. But at the end of the day, whenever you as a parent, perhaps, decide that it's time for your kids to start getting engaged with the gym, I think it's just really important that you're meeting them where they're at. That's why we do our assessment, to figure out what a good starting point is, and really hammer down a lot of the fundamentals of training. You know, if they're 7 years old, for example, you know, it might seem counterintuitive to teach them how to use a barbell, but that's a great time to learn how to use a barbell. Maybe you're not touching a 45-pound one, but maybe you're starting with a PVC. And we have training bars that are, you know, 10 pounds, 15 pounds. It's a great way to learn how to manage stress and manage load. We might not be, like you said, Bobby, like we're not doing like a 1 rep max with a barbell squat at 7, but maybe you're doing tempo stuff. Maybe you're just really learning how to do a proper barbell squat or a proper deadlift or a row or a bench press, whatever the movement might be, whether it's with a barbell or with a dumbbell or a kettlebell. But learning how to navigate the gym is really important at that age. As they get older, you know, you could start to advance the program, right? But even if they're a little older, if they don't have any experience, their training age is going to dictate where their program is at. And if you're 13 years old and you started at 7, your training age is 4 or more, right? 5. So we'll just go with that.
Yeah.
It's been yeah. So, you know, you have an older training age, the younger you start, right? So if you're 14 years old and you've never been into the gym, you're not even 1 year old in terms of training age. And I think that's an important discrepancy also, is what your training age is.
Yeah, and I think a term that gets tossed around is, you'll see it in the article, you'll see it online, is that LTAD. So long-term athletic development. And to that point, you know, the earlier we kind of get the ball rolling, you know, learning how to move your body, becoming a little more athletic with skips, jumps, things of that nature, we see like those kids carry over into the lifts. And then as we can start to implement the loads, they're stronger than the competition. Right. So it's all about that development.
Yeah, and I think too, with like, as what you guys were saying too, with like, you know, handling the barbell, because I feel like there's 2 types of kids I've seen: the ones who are overly confident with the barbell and the ones who are too scared to use a barbell. And I think it's like cool about like bringing those 2 sides into one middle point, because I've seen kids want to like be like, oh, well, I've done like 135 bench at the gym, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, how'd it look? And then like they'll show me a video and it's awful and it looks dangerous, and I'm like, well, okay, like you're telling me this was an easy rep, but when I see as a professional, that did not look easy, that looked dangerous. And then I have, you know, kids who are like, you know, younger, and they're kind of like, well, I don't really know, it felt kind of heavy, and I'm like, all right, let me watch, and then they're like repping it out. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's cool to see both sides and kind of figure out ways to bring them back into the middle and like kind of teach them, well, okay, this is how it's supposed to be, and giving them that confidence or pulling in their ego. And I think that's sort of like the dance of youth performance, and like what the coaches were saying is, you know, teaching them those skills early on so they don't make the mistakes in high school. Because obviously, you know, for, you know, athletes in high school, like the goal is either to go college, you know, hopefully go pro, right? So teaching them these skills so that when they go to, you know, in high school, they know these skills, they know how to train properly, and then when they go to college, they can just carry that over, and it just keeps compounding. And yeah, I don't know if you guys think that.
No, like our goal, there's a guy, Jim Ferris, he talks about like, my goal with a lot of my athletes is that next contract. Right. So essentially, like if we get the kid that comes in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, that next contract would be high school. Right. So like we could train them really hard, max them out, this guy's a savage in 7th, 8th grade, but then maybe he burns out in high school, right? He or she. We don't want that. Like, we want them to enjoy the process. Our training for the kids should just complement what they do on the field, right? It's a little extra stimulus to get stronger, build some size, and also become a little more resilient so they avoid the injuries. And yes, it will carry over to become better at the sport, but ours is just a little extra stimulus to get them stronger so that what they do on the field, they can outperform.
I think that's like such a huge topic that you mentioned too, is burnout and making sure that the program is appropriate so that we're avoiding burnout. And one thing that I don't think a lot of people.
What is burnout?
To me, burnout is kind of like how you alluded to, is if you're, regardless of whether it's in the gym or on the field or on the court or whatever, if you're dedicating dozens and dozens of hours and it's too much to handle on top of school, on top of other extracurriculars, family and stuff like that, burnout could look different for different athletes. I think in one way, burnout could be losing interest in a sport. In another way, burnout could be, getting injured, right? So like, I think burnout can look differently. But I think that's ultimately what causes it, is just doing too much too soon. And kind of what I was going to lead into is the fact that as sport performance coaches and as sport performance specialists, we're in kind of a unique position in that we're not necessarily coaching one sport, we're coaching several different athletes. And this may be something that not a lot of people realize about a sport performance coach, is we're really movement specialists. And we curate programs to help improve athletes' performance in a multiple, different settings of sports. So, even though personally I never played basketball, right? Seriously, other than just being outside with my friends, right? But like, I never played on a team. I never played formally. I never played in high school, but I am very comfortable and very well prepared to coach a basketball player, because I understand the demands of a sport from an athletic standpoint, from a movement standpoint, from a physiological standpoint. And, kind of going on a tangent, but to wrap my thoughts up, is a lot of these kids are focusing on just one sport constantly, right? And the importance of what we try to do in the gym is try to expose them to multiple movement patterns. But what we also try to do is try to, recommend to parents, like, you shouldn't just be doing one sport. If you're playing basketball, right, you should try also, I don't know, swimming, right? Do something that's completely unrelated. Even if basketball is your main sport, you could have a main sport, right? But do something that's totally different to work different movement patterns. And what we do in the gym is meant to complement everything else. So what are your kind of thoughts on that, guys?
No, I totally agree. I work with two wrestlers who right now are in high school and they're going into their freshman year. And, the goal of the program, as they're wrestling year round, doing summer tournaments, doing, matches here and there in the summer. Like I understood and we understood that their like technical ability was pretty sound and they're doing it all the time. So instead of like doing more wrestling drills, let's just weaponize their technical ability. Let's just make them stronger, faster, quicker, let's make it so they can manipulate their opponents. And just taking like kind of those missing pieces they had in their training, we're able to create that program like Jason said. So we're very well prepared to like make them the weapon that they are. And, obviously, I've seen things online where it's like, oh, if you want to throw a baseball quicker, why don't you just throw like a heavier baseball? And it's like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like it makes sense, but, then that leads to what you guys said, burnout. You're doing the same repetitive motion over and over again. Something's going to give. But if you're exposed to multiple different angles, doing different type of movement patterns, strengthening maybe like muscles that aren't that strong, that your throwing ability will increase, So I think it's just, the ability also to scope out like weaknesses as well. And I think for like, with when it comes to form, when it comes to like movement, as much as like, kids will get discouraged, I feel like in their form, or maybe they'll get discouraged, they don't know how to do something. Like I get like excited when I see something that's not right, because I'm like, I want to attack it. Like there's a problem there. There's an equation that's ready to be solved. And like, as much as like we always say, practice good form, when we see something that's wrong, that we're all over it. Like I get like excited to see that because I'm like, obviously I don't want to see like bad form all the time, but I get excited because I'm like, there's a problem here and we're going to find the root of it and we're going to solve it. And then, then it just compounds on itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think in my realm with the physical therapy and some of our clients, they might come in, they're like, oh yeah, like, I don't know where this came from. Like my elbow's blown up. I'll use, baseball guy, for example. My elbow's really bugging me. I didn't really do anything. I didn't fall on it. And through that conversation, you start to unfold like this kid's been playing baseball for the last like 24 months straight. Never took a rest, never tried another sport. And I'm like, well, look at a professional schedule. Like they have periods where they have like, dedicated time off. Like, why are we going 2 years straight of this very hard task? Like, you never gave your body that rest.
Right.
And that's a big problem with the over specialization and playing these sports. We're not saying we don't want the kids to get better at the sport. You have to practice, but you need time off and you need time doing other things. And part of it is how we structure our youth plan. When the sports stuff, fills up, I'll use my bucket analogy, love the buckets. Sports fill up, we have a little more activity, it's in season. The weightlifting and weight room stuff comes down. We still need to maintain those qualities and things that we did in the weight room so all that off-season work doesn't go, to crap. But then when things change, all right, sports go down, we got to ramp that weight room stuff up. And that's, the big thing with us being sports performance coaches. You could get a hard workout wherever you want, but if you have a coach who's developing you and seeing these qualities and measuring these qualities and tracking it over time, that's going to make a difference.
What are your thoughts on this? Because this may be a situation where I actually feel there is less room for that "it depends" answer, but maybe, give me your guys' thoughts. For me, I don't think any specialization in sports should occur before, youngest high school, like 14 years old, but maybe ideally like 15 years old. To me, the perfect timeline for youth development is up until, let's say, fifth grade. You're just exposing yourself to multiple different sports, right? You don't know what you have an affinity for yet, right? You're exposing yourself to multiple different sports, and maybe you're just getting some exposure and foundation to the gym. Nothing crazy, but you're just learning how to navigate it. From that 6th to 8th grade standpoint, I think that's when you're starting to develop your skills within the gym, and maybe you're finding a sport that you might have interest in specializing in, and then on your off seasons from that one sport, you're exposing yourself to other complementary yet very different sports. And then finally, when you get to high school, that's when you can start to specialize and, hone in on that. That would be my ideal timeline for any, youth development program. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you want to go first, RJ? Or
Seem like you're ready to rip.
all right. No, I agree completely. Everything said, Jason, I completely agree with. I think like anecdotally, like I played a lot of sports growing up, and I knew guys who also played a lot of sports, and girls played a lot of sports growing up, and I feel like I think a lot of this is like just my opinion. I think like with that age group, especially when they're young too, is like
Which age group?
I get like 6th to 8th grade too. Okay. I've definitely seen a little bit of like specialization in that age group for their sport, and sometimes I can just see it on their face that they're a little tired, and I could just see it in their body language, the way they talk about the sport, that they're just tired, and not necessarily burnt out yet, but just like tired. And when I grew up, I didn't really have that feeling towards my sports. Like once basketball was over, then switching to like lacrosse. And then that was just how it went. And I was like, oh, sweet, lacrosse started. I could see my lacrosse buddies. I could do this, got summer league coming up. And then after that, it was football or something like that. Like, I think like just like letting those kids like just have fun, see their friends, see their soccer friends, see their basketball friends. Like you know, I mean, in the wake of like NIL, you know, going pro, like, yeah, there's like sort of like a, you know, a rush to get them like, you know, get them primed. You know, there's lots of millions of dollars of contracts, all that stuff. But I think like it sounds really cheesy, but like I think we should just let kids just have fun and just enjoy. Yeah, just enjoy the sport, enjoy being a kid. You know, as much as like having an NIL, it would be cool. Like when you're older, like I feel like you want to let these kids just enjoy childhood, no pressure. I mean, I'm hearing stories now, you know, kids getting like college incentives at like sophomore year in high school to like come to their college already. I think there's like sort of a gray area with like NIL early on. And I'm just thinking, like, you know, I enjoyed all my sports that I played, and I only started really getting specific as I got through high school, and that was on my terms. That was me being like, I really like lacrosse. I want to go all in on lacrosse. But that was my decision, not, you know, some college. Wasn't my, you know, my parents. It was me. I made that decision. But that took years of just enjoying sports and just kind of slowly starting to decipher like which one I'm personally better at and which one I kind of have more of like a love towards. And I think that's what it is.
Experiment a little bit. You don't find that out until you do
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's just I think there's just a rush. I think we all just need to slow down, let them enjoy it, you know, make them good athletes in here, obviously, but like I think just enjoy their sport. I don't know, RJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you talk to some of these higher level athletes, you know, some of them played multiple sports throughout their whole career. I can't say particularly like a specific timeline, but I would probably say like you're playing multiple sports, you know, through high school, if not like up to that point of high school, would be like a general consensus, and then you can start to kind of divvy in a little bit. But even in the high school, like you have off seasons and you can play other things. But now with like the monetization of youth sports, you have travel teams, you know, paying, you know, thousands of dollars for, you know, little Johnny, who's a 6 year old, to get this national showcase.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not about that at that point. That's not going to do anything for the kid.
It's almost like a farm system in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are certain points for that to come in, but yeah, I'm definitely on board with like try multiple things, play multiple sports, take some time off, enjoy being a kid, and you know when the schedule like dictates it when you're a little older, like then we, you know, rally the troops and you know get a little direction of like, all right, if I want to take the next step to go to college, like you better be, you know, putting in your training, you better be doing the work.
And like, and I guess like to add on, I feel like you could see it in like the personalities of even like the pros and like the, you know, ones who go to like the Olympics. It's like they weren't being pushed, like they were driving the bus and they were like
Yeah.
obsessive of their sport, and that was on their terms. It feels like.
Well, the recent one with the Olympics that just passed was you know, it was the ice skater. Um, you know, a lot of pressure to, you know, be the best in the world, and you could imagine the weight on her shoulders to perform at those levels, not only physically but mentally. And you know, it actually took her away from the sport. And I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I believe she took a step back, kind of traveled, went away from the sport, and came back with this new perspective that she loves the sport. And lo and behold, had fun, found her passion for the sport, and won gold.
Right. And it's like, you know, I think it's such a weird stigma that like maybe surrounds athletics in general, maybe especially youth athletics. It's like either you're having fun and you're losing, or you're taking it hyper seriously and you're winning. And it's
Carrying
like,
the boats.
right.
Dave Goggins.
Dave Goggins, right? Yeah, but I think that's definitely not 100% true. Like you can 100% be a winner and have fun. And I don't know why we're, as a society, maybe afraid of that. Like that we shouldn't be. I feel like that should be the goal, is to find something that you actually love and have fun with and do great in it. And it's like, you know, a lot of people outside of athletics, just in general, you know, talk about finding their purpose in life and, you know, pursuing that. And why can't you find something similar in the world of sports? It's like, what is the sport that you were meant to play or pursue or do or whatever, and love it, and that's just going to keep you in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to add to that also, and I think like sort of with like the youth program too, is like the way we structure it is like how you said that how they view sports of having fun is also how like we want them to view training
Yes.
and like enjoy the gym and have like a positive kind of like view on it, where it's like they're like, oh, I have to go to Mach 1 Barbell today. I'd rather be like, okay, I get to go to Mach 1 Barbell today. You know, like if maybe like we train a kid through high school and then they maybe don't go to college for their sport, 20 years later, they are still in the gym and they're training because they had a positive relationship with it at Mach 1 Barbell when they're a kid.
That's it.
That's personally a win to me. That's gold. That's gold medal for me. Like,
Yeah.
that's gold medal for us. Like, I like that view. Like, I want them training. I want them to enjoy the gym. Because I mean, if you hate the destination, like, or sorry, you hate the journey, like you'll never make the destination.
Yeah. I think, there are a lot of extremes in everything, right? And a lot of the extremes do sell online, and that's probably what like a lot of the kids are looking up to. Like Tiger Woods, like running like 3 to 5 miles, constant practice, like, but he's N=1. He's one of those generational people that were doing these things, and like a lot of these adult schedules are placed on these kids. If you look at the kids' schedules, it's like it's almost busier than mine, like with school, wake up, all the things. So, I think encompassing everything that we said, like enjoy the process, make an impact, periodize the training. All these things are about the development of the youth athlete.
100%. Well, if you are interested in what we do here at Mach 1, you know where to find us. Leave a comment, send us an email. We're here, we're waiting for you. But that is our time for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Boom!
My cue's a little early, but